If you have two shoes, please sell one and buy a sword. If you have two trousers, please sell one and buy a sword. Because now it is time for revolution. And this revolution is not on the streets. This revolution is not on Facebook or on Instagram. This revolution is not about burning cars, but this revolution is in the mind. It's actually about building cars and selling them to make our own money as African people. Peace and power, freedom and decolonization to all African people from wherever you find yourself. This is Kabbalah from the African Continental Unity Party. We greet you with our revolutionary greetings as always. It is a pleasure to have you again watching this, our regular show. And we thank you for that. And we ask you to really help us to make this channel grow by eventually, if you have not yet subscribed to our channel, to do kindly subscribe. If you can also share the video or the channel with your contacts, it's gonna help us to grow, at least to reach 1,000 membership or subscriptions, which will allow us to monetize the channel so that we can obviously have some kind of help or popularize, most fundamentally popularize the ideas of the African Continental Unity Party. And also, if that can bring us some kind of economic means to support what we do, while there's nothing wrong with that. So please go ahead, like the video, share and subscribe in terms of your supports, or as a sign of your support to what we do as African Continental Unity Party. So thank you again for watching. So today I have a question, because everything in life is solved. Every problems in life is solved. Actually, every problem in life is solved through the process of questions and answers. That's how we fix every challenge that we face in life, is by asking questions and trying to respond to those questions. And if we are unable to ask questions, or if we belong to certain institutions or organizations that do not allow us to ask questions, then we are doomed to fail. We then gonna be people who are working with the dogmas, right? Because in dogmatic institutions, we are not allowed to ask questions, but we rather function with certain guidelines already outlined by certain people, and mostly you find out that they are outlined by the people who lived some centuries or some hundreds of years ago, people who did not live in our context, in our reality, in our situation, with the social cultural reality that we are facing today, where you have smartphones, smart cars, and all these things that we have, or social media stuff like that, all the challenge of modern technology. People who made those statements did not face these things that we are facing currently. So it requires us to engage our mind by asking questions, related to the contemporary situations that we are facing, and trying to answer to those questions to be able to succeed in life. And the process of asking questions actually is what we call actually thinking. When you think, you are just asking questions about whatever you want to think about. Let's say, for example, you are thinking about a particular situation in your life, or you are thinking about an event or an item, whatever that you want to think about. So when you analyze the process of thinking, is simply asking different questions in relation to that situation that you are thinking about. If it's about a situation in your life, what you do to think, you are asking questions about that situation. What is the situation? Why is it, happening to me? How can I solve it? What are the effects of the situations? Are they positive or negative? Do I like it or do I hurt it? What can I go within the situation? So that's how you think, is by asking questions. So I just have also a question today in relation to us as African people in our struggle, in what we do every day and what we are facing every day, where they talk about racism, where they talk about discrimination, where they talk about poverty, where they talk about all these conditions that we are facing as African people and trying to escape, whether on the continent or in the diaspora. So the question that I'm asking is our aim is it to get money or to get freedom? And the reason why I'm asking this question is because I've seen that in most of things that we do as African people, we are inclined or actually attracted by money more than by freedom. And I'm going to explain that so that you understand what I'm saying. We do things for money. Everything that we do, in most cases, the idea that comes first in our mind is money. In other words, the first question that we ask is, how much money am I going to get? You see, we have these projects here, this organization that we call the African Continental Unity Party. And I can tell you that ACUP at the moment has been known to almost, I can say, 90% of African English speaking countries and also some African French speaking countries. Even Angola, we have members in Angola there, in Mozambique, so you name it. So one of the challenges that we are facing with African communities on the continent is people expect the party to pay them money. When people join, you see people very enthusiastic coming to the organization and coming with a lot of suggestions. We can do this, we can do that. But at the bottom line of all those suggestions that they have, they expect money so that they can work. So in other words, they want to be employed, you see, so that they can work. But that's even contradictory, right? Because first of all, this is not a kind of an elite party. It's not a party that is actually created by a type of an elite with lots of money trying to create a narrative and control that narrative among the population. You see, now this is a common people's party. So I'm just a common person. I joined the party as well, and I found that the people whom I joined when I joined the party were also common people just like me. They are not millionaires, they are not billionaires. We are just a group of Africans who feel like our future should be decided by us or should be in our hands. And we should be in the driving seat of our future and destiny, because one of the biggest challenges that Africa is facing since we met Europeans is that the future of Africa has been always in control of other people who are not Africans. And secondly, the resources of Africa have been always controlled by other people rather than Africans. And that's the situation up to date. So we want to take charge of our reality now, to try to redefine, our future from our perspective as African masses, not from the elite perspective, elite which has been obviously in most cases corrupt and which has been obviously, as we speak now, in the pockets of the transnational capitalist class. But people want us to pay them for their own agenda. For the agenda of their own liberty. They want us to pay them. So that is where it becomes a problem. So that's why I'm saying that in most cases, you will see that the majority of African people, the question number one that is in their mind, in the forefront of their mind, is how much money am I going to get out of what I do? So that's why I'm asking, is it really freedom or money which is motivating us? So you can also think about it, you see. Is it really everything that you do every day? Is it money, just the money? Or it is freedom that you are being driven for. You see, because one thing for sure is that money is just a paper that we as a people give value. If you go with the let's say Zambian currency, which is I think Zambian dollar or something like that, you take it to go to Kenya, you won't be able to trade with that, even if it's 1 billion of Zambian currency, or even if you take Ghanaian cedis, you take it to, let's say for example, South Africa, you won't be able to trade with it because people don't give it value. People don't know what is Ghana cedis there, even if it's billions. You can live with the billions in Ghana, right? Billions of Ghanaian cedis today that can make you a respectable person in Ghanaian society, but you get with it in another society like Kenyan, South African, people won't understand what is that because they don't give value to that currency. So that's what I'm saying. Money is just papers that we have given so much value to the point where we are even worshiping it, and it has clouded our mind to realize that money does not money is not really the power that a people want, right? You can have money but without ownership, right, of certain critical things, in the society. So this is the challenge, and that's the reason why we're asking the question: it is a money or it is the freedom? Now let me try to explain this in a bit of details so that we understand what I'm trying to talk about here. Not just African common people, but also even African politicians, they are behind money. Everything they do in most cases to get the money, and even African leaders, to get the money. But what I meant about money and freedom, there's a difference between the two, right? There's a difference between the two. You can get as much as money you want, but if you don't have freedom to decide what to do exactly with that money, other people who control your life, who have taken your freedom away, will be the ones who will dictate what you will do with your money. And I'm going to give you a very practical example. We have what we call the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. These two organizations have given themselves a mandate to grant loans or credit to African nations for their own development, quote unquote, because the World Bank is called the World Bank for Development or for reconstruction, but now for development. So they have they have given themselves a mandate or objective to grant money to African states or other so-called third world countries, money for their own development. However, next to these institutions, there is one thing that is also part of the Washington consensus, one thing that is called the structural adjustment programs. Now, what does the structural adjustment programs is to put conditions or to set the modality under which the money that the African country borrows will be the modality, under which that money will be used. Okay, you borrow the money that you will have to return plus interest, right? But they're still telling you how you are going to spend that money. You see what I'm saying? For example, when you borrow the money from those institutions, you cannot invest it in agriculture production. You cannot invest it in, obviously, by boosting or subsidizing entrepreneurial initiatives in your country to boost your economy so that you can get back the money that you borrowed plus the interest or plus the benefits of those activities so that you can pay the money plus interest. So you are not allowed to use the money in those sectors that will create some kind of return on the money that you have invested. So you can only use that money, for example, to pay the 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 employees, the state employees. You can use that money rather to go back to Europe and then buy European cars for your government officials. You can use that money. So they tell you literally that you need to use the money on stupid things that cannot bring back the money back. Sorry, to bring the money back or to create some kind of interest. And they do that so that you won't be able to pay back the money, so that they can bring their enterprises to take over the minings and stuff like that, as we have been seeing in Africa. So this is the problem. We get the money, but we don't get to decide what we do with that money, how we invest the money. And one of the things that comes with the structural adjustment programs, they tell you don't do those areas. You leave them for the international capitalist companies to come take over the agriculture, right? You must open your market rather to allow them to come and take over the agricultural sector, to take over the mining sectors and all the areas that can produce the economy of the country. They must take over. But you have to spend the money by buying equipment, by buying cars that will be used by the politicians, and the cars, the money will be just, exhausted without having to create some kind of incomes, or invite them to come and build some roads that will crack the next morning and stuff like that. So this is a situation that we know about. We have experience of this in Africa. We get these billions of dollars in loans and we use them under some conditions determined by the people who gave us the money. So this is where comes the question: do we really want money, or do we want freedom? The freedom to decide what we need to do with our meager resources and to make them bigger and bigger as we are deciding about the utilization of those small resources that we have, at least. That's the question. And one of the things that we do, even from the politicians at the politician levels, that we are so much involved in to creating what we call economic development. And just in 2019, we had that in the African Continental Free Trade Agreement that was, I think, signed in Rwanda, which is a positive thing for, from most of Africans' perspective. So, but the problem is, can you imagine you going to the dealer and buy a car, a Lamborghini, for example, an expensive car, but you don't have yet the house with the garage where you have to park the car in a security? Then you'll be forced to park your car, to leave your car on streets, because you don't have a place, you don't have a house, you don't have a garage. And you leave the car on streets, you leave it under the heavy sun, the rain, and maybe the thieves will come and steal your car that you bought that was very expensive, right? So this is the challenge. We are willing to get the what we call economic development, but we don't even think about what measures of security we have put in place to protect our economy. Because one thing we need to understand clearly, and this is very clearly, is that the economic development of Africa, let's use that word, the economic development of Africa is automatically economic demise of certain European countries such as France, right, England, all these countries that have depended upon exploitation of African resources at the expense of African people. So once Africa begins to rise economically, it obviously creates a shift in the balance, which means it creates the demise, right, or downwards speed of the European countries who have been depending on exploiting our resources. And that obviously will trigger what we can call a war, whether you like it or not. And you know that as African people, we like to talk about peace, like to talk about tranquility, but there's no way that Africa will rise without triggering a kind of conflict or retaliation from Europe, which has been depending on us. You remember what the ancestor John Henry Clark said? He said Africa has things that Africa is always the richest land in the world, because Africa has things that many want and they cannot do without, and they have never wanted to pay for, and therefore they will always find excuse to invade Africa. And don't forget that we were put in the conditions we are today by force. So it is only by force that we can rise right to the condition we want, and that force will involve at some point us having to go into conflicts, military or otherwise, with the people who have maintained us in the condition of subjection. So you want the money, or you want economic development, which will trigger economic catastrophe on the other side of your oppressors, but you don't even have the means of protection, of defense, of retaliation that you have put in place to defend yourself, to defend and protect your economy. This is a contradiction, and it is just even happened recently in 2011 when Muammar Gaddafi was invaded and was killed, and his money was stolen by Barack Obama. You remember that? Gaddafi had lots of money. He was able to sponsor, the satellite projects with the 300 million US dollars by himself, right? He was able to, to subsidize the African continental banking system that was proposed at that moment with about 70 or 80% of the money that was needed by himself. So he had a lot of money. He had it. The economic conditions was good, but it did not have the capacity to defend his economy and to protect his economy. So in other words, what I'm trying to say here is that you can only build economic development as long as you have already established some means of protection, of defense, of retaliation to protect and defend your economy. If the United States has 900 billion of US dollars in military budgets, almost 900 or 800 something, that budget is there to protect their economic interest, to defend the economic interest. That is why they have military bases in almost every continent. The same thing with China. It's longing to develop its military capabilities. Do you know why? Simply to protect its economy. So there's no way we will get to that economic level that we want if we don't think about the military capability to defend and protect this economy. Otherwise, we will be invaded like Iraq, like we have been in 2011, like we are currently in every African country where you see the presence of foreign military bases and stuff like that. It's a kind of invasion. So this is where the choice becomes, do we want firstly the power or the money? Because if we want the power, we should be aiming firstly to get that level of capability, of persuasion, of retaliation that will make sure, that will guarantee the safety and the protection of every economy that we want to build, or economic level that we want to achieve. That is actually the bottom line. So you see, dear Africans or dear leaders in Africa currently, it is good that we have ambition to develop our economy. It is good that we have ambition to get more money. But money without freedom, it's useless. Can you imagine you in the prison and they give you 1 million US dollars? You cannot spend it in a prison. You cannot buy a Lamborghini because you can't drive it. You are in the prison cell. It is the same situation that happens to us now. We want money from the World Banks, but we are determined. We are being told how to spend this money, right? And this money does not give us freedom because we are being told what to do and how to do with the money. So we need to choose clearly what we want. Do we want just money, but we want freedom? Because when we have the freedom, it means we have the power, because freedom means power. For you to be free, you got to be powerful first. You got to have the power, that because freedom actually means to determine for yourself what you want. and that means you have the power to do that. And at the moment we are unable to determine about our future and our destiny, as I explained from the beginning, and we are unable to determine or to control our resources simply because we don't have the power. So when we have the power, we have freedom. So the first thing that we need to go for is the power, because once you have the power, you can decide what money you want to use. You can decide what money you need to use. You can even say, I will get rid of US dollars and use some stones as money. It will become your money because you have the power, and what you believe is your money becomes your money, right? Russia and China is busy doing that right now, and even India, they're trying to shift away from US dollars as a currency of trade among themselves to a different currency, which I think is the Chinese currency between China and Russia. So this is what the power gives you to do. When you have the power, when you have freedom, actually, you can choose any money. So we are in the same situation where we need to carefully choose, and not money, but choose the power. And how do we get the power? Is through organization. The most important weapon against Africa has been the weapon of disorganization. So if you are not part of any organization that is aiming towards African liberation and emancipation, we invite you to join the African Continental Unity Party and build it from your own country, establish it in your country, and together we will support and we'll make sure that you become successful, right? As we are getting successful in Ghana, in Sierra Leone, and other African countries, Kenya, you name it. So we invite you to join a working organization that is aiming for African liberation and emancipation. First of all, not just for money, but first of all, liberation and emancipation. You can join ACUP so that together we work on this agenda and we determine the future of Africa we want for ourselves and for our children. Not the Africa that Europeans want or the Berlin Conference has always wanted, but the Africa that Africans want, and Africa that Africans are about to decide and to design. Wanting is one thing, but doing something to create that want or to make that want a reality is the most important thing. So join ACUP, support us if you can in any ways, intellectually, with your knowledge, so that together we can make this really a successful endeavor, or with your money, with any logistic means that you may have that can propel this organization to the next level. If you have 2 shoes, please sell one and buy a sword. If you have 2 trousers, please sell one and buy a sword, because now it is time for revolution. And this revolution is no longer on the streets. This revolution is not about burning cars. This revolution is in the mind. It is about building cars and selling them for ourselves, which is the essence of power. Peace and love, freedom and decolonization to you African people. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. See you again next time.